Ciao a tutti e benvenuti a Ricordatevi il film, il podcast in cui questa settimana parleremo di film in lingua non inglese. And for everybody else, because that was just for my girlfriend who's listening to this, because nobody else will get the Italian of the joke, welcome to Remember the Film, the podcast where this week we'll be talking about non-English language films. And with me, as usual, are my co-hosts Josh. Hi, Josh.
Hola, ¿cómo están, amigos?
Okay, fine. And Grizz.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
That's the language I
speak. Yes, I will not be speaking in Italian the whole show, but I think that I should. But I've been told. Yeah, I've been told people wouldn't understand me, so I'm just gonna avoid doing that. But anyway, so
I was more concerned about having to put subtitles on the entire show.
That would be great. Okay,
which is a lengthy process on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, if there was a function on Discord where they could there was an AI that could subtitle me, we should totally do that because it would fit the theme of this episode. But alas, that's not possible. Let's get into the episode. So this week we'll be talking about first of all, our film to remember for this week was the film Another Round. Danish film that released originally in 2020, but sort of was made available for most people in 2021. And the original title is DRUK, directed by, we'll get into that. And then later we'll be talking about non-English language films in general. So what our personal experience was discovering or watching films that are not in English. And we're going to be giving out a few suggestions of what some great movies that are not in English but are really worth watching are. But we'll talk about that later. So first of all, we'll get into our film to remember, which, as I said, is the film Another Round. The film is co-written and directed by Thomas Vinterberg, who people might know. I think his most famous movie before this was The Hunt in 2012, which got a lot of
great movie, man.
Great movie, which got a lot of awards recognition, especially in the film festivals. And Another Round as well was supposed to release just like The Hunt. It was supposed to release, I think, in Cannes, but of course it had to be delayed for personal reasons in the schedule of the film, but also for obviously because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which delayed everything. The film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival in September, and was later and it was first released in Denmark, which is its country of origin, on the 24th of September of last year. The film is based on a play that was written by the director, which was inspired both by his experience with drinking at a young age and which was trying to address Denmark's drinking culture. The film is very much about the culture of drinking and binge drinking, which many people in Denmark feel is one of it's a particularly important issue in the country because a lot of people sort of engage into this type of culture. We also have me and Grizz know a Danish. We have a Danish friend in the Facebook group that we're part of together, and a couple of Danish friends, which are shout out to Islam and Johanna, who told us that the film is very, very realistic in the way that it portrays drinking culture in Denmark, which
shout out to Hamlet.
Shout out to Hamlet.
Yes, let's do that. But anyway, the director himself described the film as a celebration of alcohol and how history wouldn't have been the same without it, which I thought was really funny. But at the same time, in a more serious note, he says the film is not just about drinking, but it's also about being awakened to life. So in some sense, the main theme of the film is not necessarily the drinking, but what this decision to start day drinking causes in these people's lives. The film is first as a basic premise. The film is about these four gymnasium teachers. Gymnasium is sort of the second half of high school in Denmark.
That's confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing, but school systems are different. It's basically students from the ages of 16 to 19, kind of. Before they go to university, they go to gymnasium, and they kind of specialize.
Do you know why it's confusing for us, Hugo?
Why?
Because a gymnasium in the United States is a large room
It's a
in
gym.
which you have athletic activities.
Okay, yeah.
It's like a subset of your school. Yeah, so if you say the gymnasium teacher, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
That's fair. And the film is about these 4 teachers that are sort of, all of them are going through their own personal issues in their sort of in their mid 40s to early 50s, and they collectively decide to, as sort of a let's say a sociological study, to test this theory that you should always be just a little bit drunk to kind of take the edge off and
the theory
be more sociable and be more capable.
Right. They were humans have a default BAC that's 0.5% below where it should be. So be in a proper stasis, you need to be at a 0.5 BAC. You said, a little bit drunk.
And they cited an actual theory like from a legitimate psychologist. So
yes.
Well, I don't know the psychologist's credentials. We never learned his credentials.
I don't know his credentials. Yes. But one of the characters is a psychology teacher.
Yes.
And
he's the one who brings it up, right?
He's the one who brings it up. So I assume he at least knows a little bit about what he's talking about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know how applicable it is to real life, but I think the film portrays that. I think the film shows exactly that. It shows how, yes, it is true that kind of being a little bit drunk every day will kind of make you a little more sociable and bring out the best of you at the beginning, but then it might have consequences that you might not have predicted.
We'll get into this, but the escalation of the movie is really, really impressive, and I think one of the strongest parts,
is.
like how it starts off simple and kind of innocent, and then just it goes places. It's inevitable where it goes, but it does a really good job of it.
But I kind of like how they get to where it goes is through like a scientific method, and so it's very thematic in with the story there, which is really cool.
But it also is telling about how addiction can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we'll get into this more when we're out of the boilerplate section, but it's just really well done. This is a really good movie.
Yeah, let's just roll into just our general thoughts about the film, how much we liked it, and what we think about it, and all that. So go ahead, Grizz. What do you think of DRUK?
So I watched it last night, and as I put on my review in Letterboxd, I'm actually having a hard time putting into words how I feel about the movie. I know I enjoyed it, but there aren't really anything about it that stands out to me as like, this is why I enjoyed it so much. Mads Mikkelsen is excellent. He's always good. The other performances are fine at worst. Like there's no bad performances in here. Granted, maybe there's a language thing, and but but it sounded good to me. And it's shot well. There are some really cool scenes. There's some fun moments, like often revolving around drinking, so maybe I can relate to that. But yeah, I'm having a hard time really deciding why it is that I enjoyed it so much, but I did. I thought it was an excellent movie, definitely worthy of consideration for a lot of awards categories.
Yeah, I know what you mean, how it's like kind of... I also enjoyed it, but maybe it's not immediately obvious what it is I was enjoying, and I think I narrowed it down to the tone. This is really, it's a very tricky tone that's pulling off. I mean, Hugo, I'm kind of stepping on your toes because you have on the outline here, you have Mads Mikkelsen and you have the fact that it's a comedy, a drama. It's like those are the two things I respond to the most also. Yeah. The acting's really good and the writing's really good. But I think particularly in the writing is that it is a tonal tightrope. It's advertised as a comedy drama, both on Wikipedia and on Amazon where I watched it. I question how much it's a comedy, I guess. I think that, I mean, my take on the comedy is that the premise is a comedic premise, and that's and like drunk people are like ostensibly kind of funny to watch, but only up to a point, and they're only funny up to a point in this movie as well. And
that's kind of the point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like people like 4 teachers deciding to drink during the day is like a funny premise, but the movie plays it pretty straight as far as I can tell. Granted, I also should say that this isn't in English and comedy doesn't translate very well, and the movie Downhill that came out last year with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Will Ferrell was very much a comedy in English, but it's a remake of a movie called Force Majeure from I can't remember what country it was from, but it was also like I guess a comedy in that language too. But I watched the first like half hour of that movie, and again, it's kind of like a funny-ish premise, but like I wouldn't call that movie a comedy either. So maybe this is more of a comedy in Denmark for all I know, but like this didn't strike me as much of a comedy. I mean, it is like life-affirming and kind of funny if you like think about it, but like it also gets pretty dark. And so again, I think that the tone is very impressive to me.
Yeah, I think it has comedic elements. It has some very, very funny scenes, but
I don't know if it has very, very funny scenes.
I think
there was not any moment where I was like laughing out loud or anything like that.
I think that
I thought
one or two
of the scenes at the
scenes
beginning were quite funny.
One or two scenes of Mads Mikkelsen teaching
those scenes
was
exactly.
kind
those
of
are the ones
funny.
that I was thinking about.
But like the kids in the classroom were laughing a lot more than I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So again, maybe someone's getting lost in
And
translation.
see, I was thinking maybe they were laughing so much because it's so out of character for him to make jokes in class and things like that. So maybe that's why it was extra funny to them. It's like, that was the funniest stuff though.
Yeah, for me, I think there are some funny sequences in the film, especially at the beginning of this sort of experiment that they do. I think the film is really good at making this. Oh, this is great for them at the beginning. You know, their lives they were all kind of depressed. They were all going through a midlife crisis, and for a very short time, they do this thing and they feel great, and they are better at their jobs. Their relationships kind of improve. But then it goes downhill like very, very quickly. And I think what the film is great at doing is that it does make you feel like you're part of that. Like when Mads is, at the beginning, Mads is a depressed teacher. He's having a midlife crisis. He's having a crisis with his family. His kids don't consider him. His wife works nights, so they never see each other anymore and they don't communicate. And then he starts doing this, and for a few days, he sort of becomes young again, and he's a great teacher again, and it makes you feel, oh, I'm so happy for him for a bit, and then when it goes downhill, you feel the impact of it even more.
I agree with you, but I guess what I would say to that is that a lighthearted tone doesn't equal a comedy,
Exactly. I get that.
But I think you're getting to the heart of what I think is really the strength of the movie. Like, regardless of whether you want to categorize it as a comedy, that's kind of immaterial. Yeah. But the point is that it does a really good job of kind of showing you that these guys are in a rut. Like, all four of them are in a rut, both professionally and personally. And Mads Mikkelsen in particular. Mads Mikkelsen is, like, definitively the main character of this movie, even though it is, like, kind of four main characters. He's the main character. We spend the most screen time with him. And it really does paint a picture for you that, like, something is missing and something, they need to make a change in their lives. And it kind of... It makes their decision a little bit more palatable. The fact, I mean, again, like, just taking a step back, like, four teachers deciding to drink during the day is, like, kind of like an out there thing, and you're like, what's going on with these people? But, like, it kind of does make that seem like not a terrible idea. Maybe not. Maybe I'm overselling a little bit, but, like, it does show you that, like, why they would do this, why they would think this might be.
There's some virtue to the argument.
Yes. Like, they got to do something, and maybe getting just a little bit drunk during the day is that something that, and like you said, Hugo, it works at first, and I think that again that the escalation is really impressive, and like how every escalation is just like a little bit believable. That like all of their lives suck, and like it starts at a birthday party. So they're at a birthday party or a birthday dinner for one of the guys, and they're all like, he's turning 40. Let's have a vodka. I mean, that's completely acceptable.
Sure.
That's like that, nothing out of the ordinary at all. And like while they're getting a little tipsy, they're like, "Hey, I read a study that like you should be kind of tipsy all the time." Isn't that funny? And then like they decide to do it, and like that's kind of crazy, but like also kind of not. And then like, oh, let's not just do 0.05. Let's actually get like a little more drunk, just like because not everyone should be 0.05. You should know your own body and like be as drunk as you feel like you should be, and that kind of thing. And then suddenly it's like, screw the BAC, let's just like kind of go off the deep end, and
for
I don't want to get spoilers yet, but yeah, like, and again, like I think that the origins of an addiction is kind of what's in this, and like that's kind of how it happens. Is like, well, I mean, I can still function during the day if I'm a little drunk, so like why not do it? It's helping me. And then like, well, 0.05's not doing it for me anymore. Let's do a little bit more, and that'll be fine still. And then suddenly you're out of control and you're, again, I don't want to be in spoilers yet, but that's really interesting. That's interesting to me. And it's also interesting that they only use the word alcoholism once in the movie, as far as I could tell. It's like the unspoken thing that kind of hangs over everything.
I think a few times. They have it. They definitely have it in writing.
They have it in writing.
They have it in writing.
They have it
in writing at basically it's like the end of Act 2 or late Act 2, start of Act 3 kind of thing, when things start to go downhill. I mean, we're not into spoilers yet, but anything else you guys want to say before spoilers?
No.
Just in general, I think Mads Mikkelsen is fantastic.
He is, man.
For my sensibility, I think he would be deserving of Oscar consideration for this film as an actor. I know, of course, it's very unlikely for an actor not in a movie in English to be nominated for awards in the West, but I think his performance is that is worthy of being in that conversation.
Okay, so on that note, just real quick, like I was saying before, I'm having a hard time deciding what it is I like about it, which to me either means that I like everything about it, or it means that nothing is so standout amazing that it is obvious to me that I like that. So I thought it's a good performance, but I personally I don't see it as anything particularly groundbreaking especially for him as an actor. Honestly, I didn't think it was any better than his performance in much less serious movies like Rogue One.
He's in like 3 scenes in Rogue One, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's really good in those scenes.
Okay. I mean, he carries this movie though. Is the difference? Is the point I'm making? And
for sure.
A lot of it is, I think he's got because it's a tonal tightrope. There's a lot of subtlety in his performance that he's got to pull off to make this believable. Like I said, it's believable that they decided to drink during the day, and it's believable that they decided to kind of go off the rails. His performance sells it all, and I think again that's a credit to the writing and also to the performances. Also, he's just got he's got a face, man. His face is so he's got such distinct features.
His face has charisma.
He does, yeah. My wife watched 2 minutes of this with me, and I asked her if she recognized Mads Mikkelsen, and she said she didn't. So I just pulled up Google Images, and she was frustrated at how different he looks in every picture that's taken of him. But I think that's somehow a credit to his acting ability, even though pictures aren't really not to do with acting. But I don't know. I thought that was funny.
All right. Well, so should we get into spoilers?
Yes, sure.
Spoilers.
So it does go off the rails. It does go off the rails for these guys. That's the thing is nothing happened in this movie that I wasn't expecting. In the first in the first 15-20 minutes they decide let's drink during the day, and immediately I'm like, okay, so I know where this is going. You both knew where this is going, I'm sure. Yeah. And it goes there, but again, the small steps of escalation to get there I think are really interesting. And the fact that
they got away with it a lot longer than I thought they would.
They did, which is, again, I think kind of telling about how addiction happens, is if you do it just a little bit, and tell yourself it's okay and that no one notices, you can kind of keep doing it. But the scene
it's
where...
not as visible as it could be. Just being a little bit drunk is something that it's not necessarily something that people would notice all that much.
Yeah. Sidebar, I think that, making them teachers was a really, really good decision, because it's a job that you kind of could be a little bit drunk to do, but it's also it's not like you're flying a plane, but it's high stakes in its own way. If you get caught drunk around high school students, you're gonna get immediately fired and shamed. But it's also you're not exactly putting people's lives in danger, but it's also really, really, really frowned upon. It's right in the sweet spot of something believable you could do drunk, but also something you really, really should not do drunk, but also you're not going to kill anyone, that kind of thing. I don't know. I thought that was a really inspired choice of all the professions they could be.
I think it also
getting drunk for
depends on what the class they're teaching is. If they if they were teaching chemistry, that's probably a little more dangerous to do drunk, right?
But this guy's I mean, Mads Mikkelsen's teaching World War II era history, and one of the guys is teaching soccer to 8-year-olds, so
Yeah.
Again, not a good look to be drunk for that.
Music teacher.
Yeah, and then you have the psychology teacher and the music teacher. So
right,
again.
Which we don't see much of them actually. I feel
I thought we got a good amount of the music teacher.
Well, not teaching music. Like his scenes was like giving booze to a student, which also is not a good look at all. But okay, hold on though. Back to one of my favorite scenes is when Martin, who's Mads Mikkelsen, goes to Tommy's house after Tommy embarrasses himself in front of like all the teachers, and Tommy is like kind of coming down. I guess at that point they had all decided to like abandon the experiment because they were afraid of developing alcoholism, and then Tommy can't stop drinking for a beer.
Did not abandon it. Yeah.
Yes. Not only was he drunk, embarrassingly drunk in front of all of his colleagues, but he also like wants to keep drinking and only doesn't keep drinking because Martin tells him multiple times, "Hey, let's take it easy."
Yeah.
And then
the fact that like he, while just talking, opened the fridge to grab another beer, having just been reminded not to do it.
Yeah.
And he does that twice. It's like that is alcoholism.
And that's it's a good scene.
I also don't know if you agree with me, but I got sort of the sense that Tommy had been out an alcoholic from before this sort of sociological experiment started, because the way he talks to to Martin about you don't want this. He says this. You guys, it's been fun, but you don't want to become me. He kind of says something like that to this extent to him. And I got the idea that, maybe he hadn't been day drinking, but I think he was an alcoholic before this.
Well, they did basically kind of set that up with when Martin goes over at the beginning of the movie. He's already drinking when Martin gets there. So and basically every opportunity that he could have been drinking, even before the experiment, he was drinking. So, it's possible that they were getting at that he already had a bit of a substance abuse problem there.
Yeah. So and I think at the end, his character, the character that ends in tragedy, is what actually shakes them up. They had decided to stop doing the day drinking thing after they just gone too far and got completely drunk to dangerous degrees, and they decided to stop. But I think what actually shakes them from the rut that they were in at the end is what happens with Tommy, to some extent at least.
What do you guys make of what do you make of Martin and his wife? That's like the main emotional relationship in the movie.
What do you mean? What do we make of it?
Like, his marriage is in a giant rut at the start of the movie, and it gets a little bit better when he starts drinking a little bit, and then it gets a lot worse when he starts to drink more, and then he kind of salvages it when he stops drinking. Yeah. Again, I think that's kind of the crux of the movie, in that like you do this a little bit and things improve, and then you do it more and things get far worse than they were when you started. And that's kind of there's a message there, I think. I thought that was good though. I think
this is Drink in Moderation, the movie. That's
but go ahead, Hugo.
The thing with the relationship for me was that I think Martin is the clearest example of this, but I think the point of the movie at the end is the reason why they were in a rut were something that they were refusing to address, and the drinking kind of to some degree managed to
fill a hole,
fill a hole at first, but then when it goes bad, it forced them to address what the actual problems were. And so at the end, coming out of this experience, they are improved people, aside from Tommy, obviously, who unfortunately dies.
Yeah, it's interesting. People, at least in the United States, frequently refer to drinking as social lubrication. It loosens you up. It makes you, more
talkative, more outgoing,
less
inhibited.
And so that in that scene where like literally it's the drinking that has caused this problem that finally loosens the gears on their relationship to where they actually start talking about their actual problems. It made me think of the social lubrication thing in that moment. Like they literally oiled their relationship there.
Yeah.
I think that scene is so good. I think that scene is so good, where she tells him, you want to have a drink with your friends, I don't care. That's not the problem with our relationship.
Yeah. Now, is that the scene that you're talking about in the notes where you say, can we talk about that scene?
No.
Are you talking about the
we'll
ending?
get to that. I'm talking about the ending because the ending
Okay.
is crazy.
I want to
That's what I thought
talk
it
about
was.
the ending too. I want to talk about the ending too, but I want to go back real quick because
We'll
Hugo,
get
I think you touched on like the heart, like the major like underlying point of the movie via that relationship. It's that they're using alcohol to put a patch over a problem in their life, and it's not a solution. It's a Band-Aid over a gunshot wound, and it gives them enough. Being just a little bit not sober gives them enough to kind of temporarily fix the problem in their life. But again, eventually it only makes it worse, and that's again I think kind of like if I were to boil the movie down to like one thing, that's kind of it. I think, and I think it's really well done the way that they do that. The way that like I'm sober and my relationship is terrible. I get a little drunk and my relationship gets a lot better. I get really drunk and my relationship goes way downhill, and then I'm sober and I'm able to fix my relationship and address the problems that required me to get drunk in the first place. And like that's the arc of that relationship, and the spine of that relationship is kind of the spine of the whole movie.
I don't think that I would recommend that as a means of fixing your problems. Just based on the events of this movie. That's definitely the arc that it follows.
There's a fun meme on Twitter that's like, men will literally do blank instead of going to therapy.
Yeah.
Men will day drink at their jobs with their 3 friends instead of going to therapy.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's true. They will.
That fits. Yeah, that does fit.
So the ending. Hugo, the ending.
Yeah, so we get this crazy ending scene where at the end, I think, the characters are all improved.
It's the day of Tommy's funeral,
They've
though, right?
just
It's the
left
day of
Tommy's
Tommy's funeral? Okay, yes.
And the day of Tommy's funeral happens to also be the day where all of their students are celebrating their graduation from gymnasium. And this is true. Like the fact that Danish students, when they graduate from gymnasium, they're all 18 or 19, and so they rent out these trucks and they drive around getting drunk all day. That is something that actually happens, that they actually do.
Magnificent.
And,
Real quick
love
follow-up question. Do they all get those hats? Does every kid in Denmark get one of those hats when they graduate?
I saw a photo of Islam with a crazy hat on one of those trucks.
Is it a crazy hat
He
or is
showed me a
it
photo
this
of that.
hat? Like they all have like little
sailor hat.
I'm not entirely sure whether it was this
They
hat,
look like
but it was,
they look like Thurston Howell III from Gilligan's Island. Yeah. That's the hat.
That's the hat.
but yeah,
And I love it. It's great. I'm not making fun of it. It's awesome.
I'm jealous.
It's
I
a cool
didn't get
hat.
a cool hat like that. I
it's a
had
fun
the
hat.
stupid graduation cap. Give me a sailor hat.
I got a
I
diploma.
didn't have anything, so there you go.
I mean, I also got the diploma.
We don't even do a graduation ceremony here.
Really?
You should move to Denmark, buddy.
Yeah,
I
Denmark's got it
should.
right.
I should. That sounds fun. That sounds
Okay,
like
but
a fun place.
the ending scene is kind of a confluence of different, like a sad celebration of someone's life who just died, and a happy celebration of being done with high school, and then those two parties kind of collide, and they just like have a big drunken dance party together. That's what the note the movie ends on, right?
Yeah, well, and because they've been hinting at it for the entire movie that
Martin knows how to dance.
Martin knows how to dance.
Yes.
And
jazz dance.
And Tommy
specifically.
kept trying to get him to do it because Tommy is the one who apparently knew that Martin had actually studied dance, and so he kept trying to get him to do it. And throughout the movie, they they get closer and closer to getting him to do it. And finally, the day of Tommy's funeral, with all these students all celebrating, he finally dances, and it's really great.
It's wild.
It is.
Because it's actually him, right?
Yeah. In the credits, he's listed
It
as
looked like
dancer
him.
Mads Mikkelsen.
That's amazing because he does some crazy moves, man. Like the man is 55 years old or something. Like that was great. The one where he does that jump and that continues into like a cartwheel. That was
a lot of
awesome.
spins. A lot of spins.
That was awesome.
Yes.
And then just also swinging into the truck and then swinging back out of the truck. I was like, okay.
Yes.
I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun to see Mads Mikkelsen dance. I agree.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
Can we talk about the thematic implication to end the movie like that? Like I kind of alluded, I think part of the point is that it's a joyous celebration meeting a somber celebration, and then they kind of join together. And like, if that scene is putting a button on the thesis of the movie, it's like drinking as a celebration is okay, and you know,
Exactly.
And I don't know. I think that
It
I don't know.
it's
It's
giving
really,
an example of
Yeah.
when drinking can be something good. It doesn't have to be bad. It's just
Right.
that when you take it too far, that it becomes self-destructive and dangerous. But it can be used as a celebratory thing, you know.
But that is still a really bittersweet scene, like in the most literal
It is.
sense that it's a funeral meeting graduates. Like that is I kind of summing up the tone of the movie as well, being like, hey, it's sad, but it's also happy. And I guess the fact that it ends with him dancing, that's like the most life affirming note they could end the movie on. Like dancing on the day of your friend's funeral is quite the tonal tonal choice.
Yeah.
But
Well, he's also not just dancing because he's drinking with the students. He's happy because he got messages from his wife, them having separated.
correct.
And
Yes, like throughout. Yeah.
she's interested. You know, she says she misses him and all that. So like, you know, things are turning around for him again.
Yes,
he's
it
happy.
actually really is. It is a good confluence of every like story thread. You know, him and his wife, him and his students, him and his friends, all kind of come together in that final moment. Again, the writing's really good, and it comes together in that final moment of him just kind of getting drunk and dancing. It's great. I kind of, but at this point, I kind of can't not mention the daughter, Thomas Vinterberg's daughter. Hugo, you want or do you want me to do it?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. So Thomas Vinterberg is the co-writer and director of this, and his daughter Ida was the play that this movie is based on was partially from Vinterberg's own childhood and observations of Danish youth, but it's also inspired by his daughter Ida, who is I think 19 or 20. I'm sorry, I don't know her exact age, but she also kind of helped him with that aspect of the story, and she was supposed to be in this movie as Mads Mikkelsen's daughter, and they shot at her school with her classmates, and she very tragically died in a car accident 4 days into production before she joined the set. And so the end title of the movie the movie's dedicated for Ida is the credit at the end of the movie. And again, we were just kind of talking before we turned the mics on. Like I have no idea how Thomas Vinterberg was able to direct a movie immediately after his daughter died in such a sudden tragic fashion. I know that he took some time off and someone else stepped in to direct for a couple weeks before he was able to bring himself to do it. But you know, that's crazy, and it's one of the as I said before we turned the mics on, one of the saddest pieces of movie trivia I've ever heard is that a guy lost his daughter right before he made this. But that also kind of I can't break down the movie and not think about that in the back of my mind, that like this is what was on the guy's mind, particularly for a movie that's so bittersweet, that's, you know, tragic but also life affirming. And I think that particularly in that ending scene, I can't get in the guy's headspace and think about what he was going for without thinking about those, you know, extra circumstances. And the fact that it is like a sad scene because it's this guy's funeral, but it's also a celebration, you know, and life affirming and celebratory and joyous while also acknowledging the sadness and everything. And I don't know, I don't really have a point to this. It's just something that I can't like think about that ending scene and not think about the tone
it informs
and
the
stuff.
context of the entire
sure.
movie all the way through.
It absolutely does. Yeah,
Definitely.
So definitely worth mentioning. And when I saw that at the end in the dedication, and then I was looking at the notes you guys had written for the show, I was like, okay, yeah, this all makes a lot of sense. And it is truly impressive that he was able to not only continue working on the movie after this tragedy, but to do it to such a great degree as well. You know, the movie is well made all across the board.
Yeah, and like not only is it a movie that not only does he have to make a movie, which is hard under any circumstances, he has to make a movie when he's in emotional wreck, I imagine. And not only that, he has to make a movie that his daughter is supposed to be in.
With her
and
friends.
work on. With her friends, and something that like she kind of helped him write a little bit. That's crazy that he was able to continue working.
I mean,
and make
honestly,
it.
that could be part of the driving force behind why he was able to continue doing it.
I'm sure, yeah, to dive into your work and not think about, you know, will make a movie instead of going to therapy.
Well, I'm saying,
you know?
I'm saying that maybe it's something that because this was a project that she was attached to with him and they'd worked together on.
I'm sure.
Maybe it was an emotional catharsis for him. And maybe it helped him process her death in a positive way. So, you know, who knows?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to the guy.
But it really does. It does. That does really color the ending for me. I mean, it colors the whole movie, like you said, Grizz. But particularly the ending and the tone they go for with that joyous expression of dance and the ending scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also crying at the same time, so it's a celebration of life, but he's also incredibly sad for what happened to his friend, and so and the film is that it is to some extent a celebration of life, but it's also really melancholic and
a cautionary tale to some extent.
A cautionary tale, and looking at how you can get to a certain age and feel in a certain way in your life.
But also like it's about don't take your life for granted kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
That's a pretty basic idea, but it also it doesn't hit you over the head
context.
with it. Yeah. But that is
kind of like the context of him having lost his daughter. It's quite powerful.
Yes. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen does he loses his wife for a bit because she leaves him, but then he's able to get her back because he gets his shit together. But I don't know. I think this is good. I mean, the movie's good anyway, and I think the tonal tightrope is the strongest part. But the fact that is in the background of everything makes everything several degrees sharper and better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just really good stuff.
So, as a final thought, do you think this is it's probably a lock to be nominated for Best International Feature at the Oscars, I imagine. But do you think this could win? Josh, you're very into the Oscars buzz discussion.
So a couple things. Number one, I agree that it seems like a lock to be nominated, if not a frontrunner to win. However, the Best International Feature / Best Foreign Language Feature in the past is notoriously difficult to predict.
It is.
Even to predict what gets a nomination. So, for example, in 2019, obviously Parasite was going to rule the category, and it did.
Yeah.
But another movie that was released in 2019 that we'll talk about later is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which it was in France, and largely considered
France
to be...
presented another movie?
Well, that's the thing, is Portrait of a Lady on Fire is largely considered to be one of the best movies of 2019, hands down, in any language, one of the best movies of the decade in any language, and it was not nominated for an Oscar because the rules are only one movie per country, and for some reason that is beyond me, France put in a movie called Les Miserables, not to do with the Hugo play, but a different movie. And so Portrait of a Lady on Fire did not get nominated for Best International Feature, which is, again,
a crime.
Bonkers to me. Yeah. So I say all that to say that, this category is difficult to predict. So, we can agree that this seems to be the frontrunner to not only get a nomination, but also win. I guess Minari isn't eligible in this category because it's an American production. Which is good for Minari. But if that were competing, I feel like that would probably be the frontrunner, but it sounds like it's not. So I think that this is definitely the frontrunner.
But hopefully the Oscars can fix the Golden Globes mistakes. And,
as we say every time we mention the Golden Globes.
Yeah, we know, but I agree. But also, I think Minari does deserve the recognition, and I hope the Oscars can give it that.
Well, so I guess my question, and maybe we should address this in a larger Oscars episode, but I'll just go ahead and throw it out here right now. What is the virtue of having a foreign language category?
I mean, I think the virtue of any category, the virtue of the Oscars in general, is that it shines a spotlight on, and gets a lot of ink generated for movies that people may otherwise miss. That's why I love that the Best Picture category is now up to 10 movies, because it's more movies that is put on people's radar that would not be on the radar otherwise. And I don't know. I think that Best International Feature or Best Foreign Language Film, as it used to be called, I don't think a ton of attention gets paid to that, but it does to me. For example, I keep my ear to the ground pretty well in terms of what movies are coming out, but I'm not the best at non-English movies. I'll hear about the ones here and there, but a lot of the times the nominees for Best International Feature, I'm hearing about them for the first time.
Agreed.
And they're almost always really good.
Yeah.
I'm never disappointed in a Best International Feature nominee that I watch. They're usually great, and I'm usually glad that I saw them. And oftentimes, again, their nomination is the first time hearing of them. So, I mean, that's the virtue for me, at least.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be, though, that by separating them into so my problem is with it being a separate category, that it
Ghettoizes.
Yes, it separates them. It makes it doesn't necessarily state that they are lesser in some way, but the fact that that so frequently the nominees for Best International Film are not included in the Best Picture category at all.
Yeah.
To me implies a degree of lesserdom to the international films, and I don't think that's fair. Like just look at Another Round. This movie is as well made, as well performed, as any movie that it was released in the States. And
yeah, I mean, I think it's among the 10 best of the year. If I'm giving out a nomination for the 10 best movies for Best Picture, this is getting one for me.
But so what's the point of separating them like that if it's just going to marginalize them?
Well, I guess my answer to that would be because not every movie nominated in this category would otherwise be nominated in Best Picture.
I mean, that's true.
So, in fact, most of the time, I think that's the case. The last few years, not necessarily the case with Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Parasite, and Roma.
And Roma,
but,
yeah, all excellent. So yeah, so basically,
but two of those three got nominated for Best Picture, though.
Yeah,
and one of them won.
That's true. So I guess we are moving in the right direction. I just,
yeah, in the last 10 years, there's been 3 movies that are not in English nominated for Best Picture. Because Amour in 2012, the Michel Haneke movie as well. That's. But you have a point. In fact, I know that a lot of Academy voters are completely against nominating animated movies in Best Picture because they have their own Best Animated category.
And that is a tragedy.
Which I'm sure really pisses you off in particular, because I know you love animated movies. But also, I think that I'm
just 1 second. So we all know about them not allowing, people don't nominate animated films for Best Picture.
Some people.
Now imagine that one of the best animated movies of the year is in a foreign language. That movie is probably not going to get nominated for Best Picture for sure, but is also probably not going to get nominated for Best Animated Feature. It's rare. I mean,
the Red Turtle, is that what that was called a few years ago? Was that not in English? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
It wasn't.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, but I know which one it is.
My Life is Zucchini, was that in English? That I think won.
I think also Mirai was nominated. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I'm completely talking out my ass right now.
Yeah,
so I apologize.
I think Mirai was nominated for Best Animated, but
okay.
It's adding an extra layer of complication.
Separation. I get it. I think that again, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of like talking about things that I read, but I think the idea of not nominating a movie because it's in a foreign language and that has its own category, or not nominating a movie because it's animated and that has its own category, I think that's a pretty old school mindset.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset is slowly leaving the Academy, because the Academy used to be mostly old dudes, and now it's like still mostly old dudes, but they have a less plurality. And so I think that I think particularly with international features, I think that the more diverse Academy will start to honor those more. Again, we have had 2 non-English movies as Best Picture frontrunners the last 2 years. One of them actually won, one of them didn't, unfortunately. But things are changing. But I see your point, and I definitely take your point. But my response to that is, again, I think most movies nominated for Best International Feature would not be in the Best Picture race, and it's just good to get more eyes on them and more ink about them. But yeah, every once in a while a movie comes along that deserves to be in that category.
Because those movies aren't as frequently considered for Best Picture, is that limiting how much money can be put into the production of those movies, and is that why they're not on the level, quote unquote, of the other Best Picture nominees? Oscar buzz generates money.
To be fair, though, a lot of Oscar-nominated movies aren't that expensive to produce.
That's true.
And I don't think there's that much.
But there's the money that goes
in
into
the last few years, especially. Well, yeah, the money in the campaigning maybe, but I don't know if that's necessarily the issue. I think the issue is, in a perfect world, Best Picture means, with no preconceived notion of what a film should be, we nominate the 10,
that's never how
consensus
it works,
best
never how it
film,
works.
but it's never going to be.
But,
exactly. It can't be like that because of the composition of the Academy, and because it's just a very complicated thing to enforce, because you'd want everyone to watch everything, and that's not necessarily how it happens.
Unfortunately, no. To address your concern, though, Grizz,
Yeah.
I do not think it's the case that any movie is getting less of a budget than it should get because for not international movies are not nominated for Best Picture.
Sorry.
Number one, I know, but the funding system for movies outside of America is a lot different than the funding system in America, and also I doubt potential Oscar chances are in anyone's spreadsheets of them budgeting a movie.
That's fair.
Sorry, go ahead.
But it wasn't so much that they didn't get the money for that movie to become an Oscar, but because those movies aren't being considered, then the next great
I see
movie
what you're saying.
Isn't getting the budget. I don't know. I think I'm worried that it's a vicious cycle thing, that those other parts of the world that are developing all these great movies can't get into the spotlight because they haven't had it shown on them enough to then make it so that the next movie that's really great that they make can get more attention. But it's all hype. That's all theory. From obviously, I don't have numbers on it or anything like that.
But I think that the Best International Feature category can also shine a spotlight, and as proof of that, like, look at some directors who are nominated in that category who went on to do like way more high-profile stuff. Like I was looking at the winners and nominees, trying to so we can have a larger conversation about non-English movies. And the category in 2010, the Best International, back then it was called Best Foreign Language Feature, but Best International Feature in 2010, movies directed by Suzanne Bier, who would go on to make a lot of stuff in English, including The Undoing on HBO last year, Alejandro Iñárritu, Denis Villeneuve, and a fourth person who was also I can't remember who it was at this point, but like, you see my point.
Yeah.
Like, a guy who was nominated for Best International Feature would go on to win Best Director 2 years in a row at the Oscars. And a guy who, two of the only guys who've ever won Best Director twice were nominated for Best International Feature in 2010. Or I'm sorry, not Corone, but you get what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so, I don't know.
So it's an
I
important category because it is opening doors for future movies and things like that.
Yeah.
And for future
Maybe.
consideration. So I mean,
Yeah.
So I can see the
Guillermo
argument
del
that there
Toro
is some virtue
is a similar story.
Guillermo del Toro's been in that category before. Iñárritu's been in that category. Denis Villeneuve's been in that category. Suzanne Bier, like I said, has been in that category. She won, actually, in that category. Yeah, so.
Okay, bringing it back to our film to remember.
Sorry,
discussion,
I took us off
rank.
the rails there. My bad.
No, that's a
all
good
right.
discussion. That's a good discussion for
it's-
the main topic, yeah.
Yeah, the topic is non-English language films, so that I think that's a a discussion
Great
worth
discussion,
having. Yeah. So okay, let's rank DRUK or another round in our current list. For now, we have Citizen Kane at number 1, Boogie Nights at number 2, The Thing at number 3, The Departed at number 4, It's a Wonderful Life at number 5, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom at number 6, Rudy 7, Man Kate, Jackie Brown 9. 10 Matrix Reloaded, 11 Iron Man 3, 12 Sugarland Express, and 13 Godfather Part 3. Or Il Padrino Parte 3, since we're doing international features.
Say Electric Boogaloo in Italian.
Electric Boogaloo. Whatever.
You're giving an accent!
What? I don't know.
This
Boogaloo. I don't know what Boogaloo means.
This is tough for me because, Hugo has struggled in the past ranking because, for him, Rudy is above Jackie Brown, and he thinks Jackie Brown should be above Rudy. That's never been an issue for me, but now it is, because I think this should go somewhere between Mank and Ma Rainey, but I think Mank is better than Ma Rainey, but we have it higher than Mank, so I don't know.
Yeah. This is why Josh hates this whole experiment.
Yes, this exercise is terrible. I don't know. I put this...
Okay.
Am I giving it the generous ranking or the non-generous ranking? Because should it be above a movie that I think it's better than, or below a movie that I think it's worse than?
So I think at this point it might be the best option would be to start at the bottom and raise our hands if we think it's better than that, and then once we get to the point...
not at the bottom, because let's start from Jackie Brown. Let's say.
Okay, so do we agree? Okay, I think that's fair. Because that's honestly the breaking point for me. Because I think Jackie Brown, and then beyond that is okay, they're not as good.
Okay.
So, is it better than Jackie Brown?
I will not stand for this Matrix Reloaded shaming on the podcast, but fine.
Is it better than Jackie Brown? I think it is.
No.
Yes.
No. Okay, so then right now we have it above Jackie Brown. Is it better than Mank?
Yeah.
Also no.
Yeah.
I think it's
I would
better
say
than
yes.
I'm being outvoted. Let the record show.
Is it better than Rudy? I say no.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where it
Oh
stops.
my god. Okay, fine. So we have...
To everyone listening who's
another
mad that
round.
people who rank this above Jackie Brown, send all your tweets at GoodGameGrizz on Twitter. Direct all your ire towards him.
Give me a follow.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yes, and if you're
All
a
right,
Notre Dame fan,
so-
go ahead and give me some support for defending Rudy.
That movie...
It was
Bob
good.
Rudy
You
slander
enjoyed
on
it.
the
Stop
podcast.
acting
I'll
like you
never hear the
didn't
end of it.
enjoy it.
I did. It was fine. I did. It was completely fine. I liked it.
So if you want to defend
For a main
Rudy,
topic
at
this week.
Hugo_Panay on Twitter, tweet at him how good Rudy is.
Shit. Okay. So for our main topic, we were going to talk about non-English language movies in general. I think we already had a very interesting discussion of
the
how they fit
Oscars.
into the
Yeah.
into the awards ceremonies. But I wanted to just have some general thoughts from each of us on what our experiences with foreign language films and what kinds we like, what kinds we want to see more of. Some directors that we think are just a blind recommendation. We don't even have to talk about them much. Stuff like that. So, Chris, do you want to start?
Sure.
What's your personal experience with international movies? This is the first question. on that.
Yeah. So I watch a lot of anime movies, so I have quite a bit of experience with that. I watch a lot of Kurosawa films. I love samurai movies, so I've seen quite a few of those. I also like kung fu movies, so anything with Bruce Lee in it,
Donnie Yen.
Yeah, I mean, Ip Man, so good. Mm-hmm. I've watched a lot of those movies, and I've watched a few, spaghetti western, Sergio Leone, or a wide variety. But I think basically the entry point for me would have come from animated movies, because I started watching anime when I was a kid. And that was TV shows and things, and then there were movies that were associated with the TV shows. So then I watched those, and that got me into watching more and more anime as well.
But were the TV shows dubbed?
Yeah, I watched dubbed shows as a kid. I still watch dubs whenever I can, but that's mostly out of a desire to be able to look away from the screen to check my phone or something like that. It's not a preference necessarily. I don't mind watching with subs if I have to.
Do you remember? This is a tough question. Do you remember the first movie you watched that wasn't in English that was subtitled?
I mean, yeah, I don't remember exactly what it would have been because my mom watched a lot of foreign films when I was a
nice.
kid.
Good for you.
So I watched a few with her, but it would have been so long ago that I I can't really remember the first one.
I actually can remember the first movie. I think at least that I can recall seeking out specifically, and that was City of God, which I will talk about in a little more detail later on. But back when I was I think it was the summer before college, I was watching all these movies for the first time, and that was because I was 18 years old and a guy. I put a lot of stock in the IMDb top 250. Which I no longer put a lot of stock into because I'm no longer an 18-year-old man. But that was
just for the
very
record,
high
I
up.
still actually like that list.
I do too, but I also try to keep in mind who it is that's voting on that.
Agreed.
And I think that's something everyone should keep in mind. Mostly 18-year-old men, for example. But at the time, City of God was maybe the highest non-English movie on that list. It was top 20. It's still top 25, I think. And on the DVD box, there's a poll quote from Roger Ebert that says, one of the best movies you'll ever, underlined, see. And it was from Roger Ebert, someone whose opinion was gospel to me at the time, and still is to
an extent.
I've tried to find the source of that poll quote, and I cannot for the life of me find it. So I don't know. I'm not accusing anyone of plagiarizing a Ebert quote to put on a DVD box, but I cannot find the source of that quote, much as I have tried. So yeah, I watched that when I was, before college. And then in college, I saw, I took a film class, and we watched Amelie, and we watched Ip Man, Grizz. And I think on my own, I saw The White Ribbon, which I can't necessarily recommend. But also around that same time, my first year of college, Slumdog Millionaire came out and won Best Picture. And that's half not in English about.
Yeah.
And the following year, Inglourious Basterds came out, which also is about, roughly half not in English. So, these are all good gentle, entrances into watching movies not in English with subtitles on is like those two, and also like City of God and like really enjoyable movies like Amelie and that kind of thing. And I don't know, since then I've kind of been like all in, and I watch even English movies with subtitles personally because I can't hear anything. So I don't know where you guys are on that, but Hugo, what about you?
Yeah, Hugo, have you ever seen
a
movie that's not in English?
Me? No. Actually, the first time for this week's episode was this, so yeah, I've never seen anything not in English. Yeah, obviously, I'm from Italy, so I've growing up, I saw a lot of Italian movies on TV, both, classics that people outside of Italy would know, and a lot of, especially a big genre here in Italy is kind of the romantic comedy. They're not very good, but a lot of them are not very good, but I've seen a bunch of them just because I was exposed to them my whole life. In fact, the reason why I'm called Hugo, which in Italian is Ugo, is it comes from a movie. It's the movie, it's called Il Postino, or The Postman. I'm not sure if people know it, but it's a very, very good Italian movie, and basically there's a joke in there that because my parents kind of didn't know what to call me, and they were thinking of calling me Massimiliano, which is a longer Italian name, and there's a joke in there that says, oh, you can't call him Massimiliano because he has to have a short name. By the time you say Massimiliano, he's already run out of the door. So it's kind of the same concept as dogs.
That's how you ended up as Hugo.
And they really liked the name Hugo, and so I ended up with it. And, I have an H in front of it because my mum is English, but whatever. Anyway, so I have sort of a relationship to that movie as well. A lot of Italian movies, but I think when I started watching films that are neither in English nor in Italian, it's mostly started for me with Asian movies. I'm not sure why. I think it's just because a lot of Asian movies kind of... There is a lot of them. There's certainly Asian countries are, especially, Korea, Hong Kong, China, and Japan are definitely some of the most prolific countries making movies, especially more recently compared, to the rest of the world. And movies that get more kind of international fame, if that makes sense. But we'll talk about it in a minute. But I think the reason why I gravitated towards those is a lot of them are thrillers, psychological thrillers, revenge movies, action movies, some science fiction here and there. And those are genres that have always interested me. And so those are the movies that probably attracted me the most. And then more recently, I've started getting into some more classics, European films and all that.
Same. Yeah. In the last 5 years, I discovered like Fellini and Truffaut and Bergman in the last 5-10 years. Yeah. Or 5 years, really.
So should we move on to rattling off some of those directors and movies that we recommend?
Yes. Yeah.
So
we were going to do sort of a speed round.
Yeah.
Of recommendations.
Josh, I'll let you go first because you're first in the notes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, here's some people, like, if you want to dip your toes into non-English movies, there are, like, several directors who have made it big with English movies who also made non-English movies. And so people like Alfonso Cuarón, Guillermo del Toro, Alejandro Iñárritu, Denis Villeneuve, Bong Joon-ho, obviously. Bong has some movies in English. I realize he won Best Picture for a non-English movie, but he has made English language movies.
Snowpiercer.
2 movies in English.
Yeah, Snowpiercer's great. Yorgos Lanthimos, he recently made The Favorite, which is nominated for Best Picture and won Best Actress. He's also made several movies. Is he Danish or I can't remember.
No, I think he's Greek.
He's Greek. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Also, he makes really, really weird movies, so maybe don't make those your first ones that you watch. Suzanne Bier, aforementioned, Lars von Trier, and Ang Lee. Yes, and also Ang Lee has made. He's won Best Director twice for English language movies, but also made like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is one of the first like non-English movies to make a big splash in my memory.
He also made an Incredible Hulk movie.
Yes, he did, which is not as bad as people say it is. I will defend the movie Hulk. It's not good. I think
it has some really it has some really creative, good ideas. I'll say that. In how it's filmed. Then it's not a great movie, but it has some cool stuff in it.
Ang Lee is an interesting case study of that kind of thing, of like interestingly filmed, but maybe not like the best, most satisfying narrative. And then so those are people who have made movies in English and non-English, and these are people who make almost exclusively non-English movies, but like just watch anything they make because across the board it's good. Wong Kar-wai, Asghar Farhadi, Michelle Haneke, Jean-Pierre Junot, Claire Denis, she's made some English language, but not a ton. And Park Chan-wook.
Park Chan-wook
And,
did English
Boy,
stuff
right?
as well, yeah.
He did Old Boy.
Park
He
Chan-wook
also did,
did-
I think, The Handmaiden from a few years
that's
ago.
right.
which
He
I
also
thought
did The
was
Handmaiden.
Yeah.
excellent movie.
He did what he calls the Vengeance Trilogy, which is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, and Old Boy. And then he did The Handmaiden, and those I think are his movies that are most known. But in Korea, he's one of the most well-known directors, and he's made like 15 movies
For
that are all
sure.
hits over there.
For sure. And Old Boy is one of the biggest South Korean movies to make a splash in the United States, I would say. That came out in 2003, and then Spike Lee remade it, which I'm not sure that was a good idea, but it exists. Should I talk about movies, or do you guys want to list your directors, then we can talk about specific movies?
Just to add some stuff to what you said, Kurosawa, obviously, Grizz already mentioned him, but Sergio Leone, Andrei Tarkovsky, Fellini, Bergman that you already mentioned as well.
I should say everyone I mentioned is like currently making movies, like modern movies, and everyone you just mentioned is like the classics,
it's more classic,
best directors of all time kind of situation.
Exactly.
See those obviously, but if you want something with more like a modern bent, the ones
Yeah,
I
that's true, because some people have a hard time watching old movies. So
exactly,
watching something more modern would be a good intro for people who haven't watched a lot of foreign language films.
Yes. So also other interesting directors that I wanted to mention that I haven't gotten into yet, but I've seen what the kind of movie they make, the kind of movies they make, and I think they're really interesting. Directors like Agnès Varda from France, obviously a classic female director, one of the trailblazers of her time.
Recently
Pedro
passed
Almodovar,
away.
who's Spanish, and Takashi Miike, Japanese.
Pain and
interesting.
Glory was a Pedro Almodovar movie from I think 2 years ago, and it was very good. That was the first Almodovar movie I've seen. I know he's got like at least 5 or 6 that everyone should see. But
and also, if you want to see the most messed up thing you'll ever see in your life, watch The Skin I Live In from Almodovar.
Yes, maybe among his most famous movies. I think I've not seen it, but frequent collaborator with Antonio Banderas. Yeah, he was in both of those
and
movies.
Penelope Cruz as well. Yeah, that film is something. But go ahead, Chris.
I've heard.
Sorry.
Well, and so since basically all the directors I would have named were named already, I chose to list a few animated directors like Hayao Miyazaki, Makoto Shinkai, and Mamoru Hosoda, all prolific anime filmmakers, and you can't go wrong with anything that they have done so far. Studio
Fantastic.
Ghibli as a whole, most people are aware of. That would also qualify as anime, and I would recommend.
They're all on HBO Max.
They're all on HBO Max. There's only one movie from Studio Ghibli that I would not recommend, and that is the new one. Earwig and the Witch.
Is it out yet?
Yeah, it's on.
It
was on Netflix.
Okay.
It's not good.
So yeah, I mean, just check out all the movies from the directors we just mentioned. Can I mention just a few specific movies? Is that cool?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm going to as well.
Yes. So I already mentioned Portrait of a Lady on Fire was one of the best movies of 2019. Definitely watch that. We're each gonna mention 2 movies and go into more detail in a second. But if I had to list a third, it would be Let the Right One In, which is a vampire movie from Sweden, I want to say, from like 2010ish. That was also remade in the United States, but the Swedish version is phenomenal. And Let the Right One In, big recommend. In the Mood for Love, that was probably my 4th pick if I had to do a 4th foreign language movie that's or non-English movie that's important to me. Y Tu Mama Tambien, which was put Alfonso Cuarón on the map. Going back a few decades, we have Bicycle Thieves, which is Italian movie made in the 40s that really holds up.
It does. It holds up really well.
Huge recommend for Bicycle Thieves. Just a devastating movie. Going to Kurosawa, Rashomon. That's one of my favorite Kurosawas. Is Rashomon. It's a lot shorter, and I mean, Seven Samurai is 3.5 hours long. It's a tough sit. Rashomon's like 90 minutes, so I'm on board for that.
Yeah.
Also, like it was such a unique storytelling device that there's now something called the Rashomon effect, where you see the same event from different perspectives, and it's from this movie Rashomon. High and Low, which is Kurosawa made more than just samurai movies. He did make movies in modern Japan, and so High and Low is a movie that takes place in the 60s in Japan. It's very, very good.
It's a murder mystery film.
It's a kidnapping.
Great murder mystery.
It's a kidnapping.
Kidnapping film. Yeah, it's kind of but a detective film.
Ransom kidnapping situation. Son of Saul.
Also Ikiru from Kurosawa.
Yeah. Son of Saul won the Oscar for Best International Feature, like 2015. devastating movie, but very, very good, and recommend it. 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days. I've mentioned that on this podcast before. I mentioned it just as a movie that exists. What I did mention is that it's largely considered one of the best movies of the 2000s, and it is. So seek that one out. A Separation is a Farhadi movie that's really good. City of Lost Children is a Jean-Pierre Jeunet movie that's really good. Cinema Paradiso is probably... All the Italian movies I've seen are all like Fellini movies from like the 60s, but Cinema Paradiso, even though that movie is 30 years old, it might be the most recent Italian movie I've seen, I'm sorry to say. So
you haven't seen Life is Beautiful?
I've not seen Life is Beautiful.
Roberto Benigni's. Oh, you should watch that.
Cinema Paradiso,
great
would also
movie.
be on my recommendation list because it's basically a love letter to movies.
It is.
So, if you're a fan of movies like we are, highly recommend it.
What about you,
Hugo?
Chris? What are some
you
of
want
your
me to do mine?
favorites? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so just some other ones. Your Name is one of my all-time favorite movies. That's Makoto Shinkai movie that just came out in 2016. I've been trying to recommend people watch Bahubali 1 and 2, which is Bollywood, basically like a superhero movie, but it's like they use set in like swords and castles and that sort of time period.
Okay.
It's absolutely insane. The visual effects are. You've probably seen them on VFX Artists React on YouTube, but they are crazy. I also wanted to throw out The Untouchables, which is a French movie that was just recently remade unnecessarily.
With Kevin Hart.
Very unnecessarily, yeah.
And then Harakiri, which is another samurai movie, but that one's a lot more. It's not so much about the action as it is about the introspection and mental, stuff that they're going through in this movie. Very, very good stuff. Okay, let's start diving into our suggestions because we are running long, guys.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should just keep going with suggestions and maybe not have time to go too deep on.
Okay, I'm going to be pretty surface level on mine anyway.
Yeah, 60, 90 seconds on each one is what I was thinking. Like, just a pitch.
Yeah. Okay, Josh. So can I rattle off some of my favorites?
Go for it.
Yeah, okay, so in general, since I've said I gravitate more towards genre, and I think there's a lot of very, very interesting genre films that are not in English. So, for example, sci-fi films from Russia. Tarkovsky has made Solaris and Stalker, that are both two of the best science fiction films of all time. Very, very, very great films. Movies like Akira, obviously another anime, one of the very important science fiction films that inspired a lot of movies that even came out in the West. Action movies from Hong Kong like Better Tomorrow, Police Story by Jackie Chan, Hard Boiled, which I'm going to talk more about. But again, this is from China. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is another movie we mentioned, which is absolutely brilliant. And my favorite genre of foreign films are probably the Korean revenge thrillers, which Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, we've already mentioned them, and also I would like to throw out I Saw the Devil, which is a really, really disturbing, hard R movie from Korea, but it's a nail-bitingly tense, great movie. And that's it, yeah. So let's dive into the cool. I think what we wanted to do is throw out two suggestions that we think could be kind of the good entry points, and two of our favorite that could be good entry points into watching other movies.
We kind of did this backwards. Like, these are the ones we really, really, really recommend, and the ones we just named, like, put them on your list, but, watch them at some point.
Put them on your list.
These are the ones we really, really recommend.
I mean, these are ones...
Exactly.
the way I approach it is, the ones that we rattled off, those are ones that are, like, obvious. These are the ones that you need to watch. And I guess to some extent, some of these are going to be like, yes, you obviously need to watch this. But the way I approached it was, these are ones that might not be something that everyone would think they should try, but I would recommend. That's how I approach it.
So we approached it a little differently then, and that's fine. Like, my approach was that, like, these were two of the first non-English movies I saw, and I really responded to them, and, like, they kind of taught me it's okay to watch movies not in English. Like, these were very, very palatable for me and easy to watch and very enjoyable. And I'm like, oh, this actually isn't that bad having subtitles on, so I'm going to go explore more. So
Josh, you're up
which
first.
I think is... Okay, cool. I've already mentioned both of mine at some point, but first we have City of God, which came out in 2002 from Brazil, directed by Fernando...
Meirelles?
Thank you, Hugo. I don't want to try to say it. I know a little Spanish. I don't know any Portuguese, so I don't know how to pronounce the Portuguese name. And it is as I said, a big... Roger Ebert was a big fan of this, which made me a big fan of this at the time, and still. It is about a slum outside of Rio de Janeiro, and it's just kind of like the story of the inhabitants of that slum. And it's a crime drama. A lot of murder, a lot of drugs, and I guess the main character is this kid who grows up there who's kind of like outside of like all the bad stuff. He's more of an observer. The movie opens with him as a photographer, and it ends with him as a photographer, and it's loosely based on the story of a guy who was a photographer from that part of the world who kind of broke the story of the slum to the larger world. And so like the main character is kind of like a passive observer by design. And but yeah, I mean it's very exciting. Ebert compared to Goodfellas, I kind of see the Goodfellas comparison. I get that. Violent. Sometimes it's hard to watch because there is like violence committed by and against like kids.
Children.
There's like 12-year-olds shooting each other.
It's not an easy watch in that regard.
Yeah, it's a tough sit, but it's also extremely entertaining. It's 2 hours and 9 minutes. And it's not boring at all for those 2 hours and 9 minutes, which I think is like important if you're trying to like as a barrier of entry for a non-English movie. I think this is like an ideal candidate just because it's like exciting and fast-paced and amazing cinematography. Just what they do with the color and how they move the camera. And it's also very like segmented and like here's the story of the 1960s in the slum, here's the 70s. It starts out with like these characters as kids and they grow up and become like the drug lords in the slum, and it's really good and
fantastic.
Yeah, big recommend.
I watched that in college. We had were you there for that? I don't know if you were already
I don't know.
At school. We had an international movie night that we did once a month, and the first movie we chose was City of God.
Great choice. Yeah, I mean, like I said, that was like the first non-English movie that I sought out and watched, maybe among the first that I saw, and like it was a good choice because it taught me like, oh, this movie rules, and I wasn't at all bothered it wasn't English, so I continued on from there. Grizz, what's your first one?
Oh, you want me to do my first one? Okay.
Yeah, let's go. Let's ping pong it.
So my first recommendation is a movie called The Raid, or it's called The Raid Redemption in the U.S. Sony could not get the rights to the name The Raid in the U.S., so that's why it's The Raid Redemption. This is an action movie in its purest form.
Yes.
It's funny that Josh has mentioned how much he respects Roger Ebert's opinions on things, and Josh has not seen this movie yet. Roger Ebert gave this movie a 25. According to Metacritic, so that would be 1 star on his rating.
Okay.
He
missed a lot. He missed a lot, and that's a miss. A miss.
That's his view on it. But overall, very especially among action movie fans, this is considered one of the best. This movie,
absolutely,
admittedly, has just a sliver of plot that they set up in the first 10 minutes, and they tell you everything you need to know, and then after that, it's slam down the gas, we are going. The whole movie takes place in an apartment building in Jakarta. This movie was made in Indonesia, and it all takes place in Jakarta, and it's all in this one apartment building. And they're doing a raid. They're trying to get to and capture or kill the kingpin, who is on the top floor of the apartment building, and they have to fight their way through the entire apartment building. These cops. It is some of the best stunt choreography. It's surprising. It's super interesting, and it's just all around great. As long as you can get comfortable with the idea that they're not going to spend a whole lot of time on dialogue. The story is told through action, and that is something that I think can be done beautifully, and it is done that way in Raid Redemption. They set out to do one thing to the best that can possibly be done, and I think they just about get to it. It's that good.
Yeah, I haven't seen this, but I took a film class in college, and they showed us a 5-minute fight scene from either The Raid or The Raid 2. I don't remember because there's multiple movies, but it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Is the 5-minute fight scene they showed us. So I've been meaning to check this out for a decade. I just haven't yet, but yeah, definitely recommend.
It's so much fun. It's a fun movie. As long as you're okay with brutal violence, because it is insane.
We're pro brutal violence in this podcast, right?
Oh yeah, we did a whole 2 episodes on Tarantino.
Yeah.
Of course we're pro brutal violence.
And The Departed.
And The Departed.
The Departed.
Hugo, what's your first rec?
Right. So my first, for this, I wanted to choose a fun one. So a film that I think anybody can get into, and it's just a fun watch, and it can get you into more foreign films, and sort of a more art house psychological drama.
Good mix. Good
But
mix.
for my first pick, I chose the 1992 Hong Kong action movie Hard Boiled, directed by John Woo.
Woo.
I chose this movie because I think it's one of the best examples of the Hong Kong action film, and which is one of my favorite genres of action and of international movies. And these movies are crazy. John Woo movies that he made in the 90s in Hong Kong.
John Woo would go on to
kind of
he would
like
go
the
on to
way-
have some he would go on to have some English language success, which we'll get to in a second, I hope. John Woo's
Oh
English
yeah,
language
yeah,
movies?
yeah.
Okay.
He would of course go on to make Face Off, which is absolutely insane.
Just a
He made,
seminal classic.
Yeah,
That gives you a sense of like the kind of
one of
movie
the
he's
craziest
making. Though.
films.
That gives you a sense of like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
kind of
But
movie
I-
he's making. Just a balls to the wall action movie kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's something about his movies that he made in Hong Kong, particularly the 3 most well-known ones are A Better Tomorrow, The Killer, and Hard Boiled, which are 3 movies starring Chow Yun-fat as either a criminal or a detective, but the plot doesn't really matter because it's all about the set pieces. These movies are absolutely insane, and just like other Hong Kong action movies, they go all out with the stunts. They do some crazy stuff. People get really hurt, but it really shows when you go to see these action sequences that feel so visceral and powerful. And I chose John Woo specifically because I think what he adds on top of that is a very distinct visual style. He uses a lot of slow motion. He
of
does
doves.
really, really long. There's no doves in Hard Boiled, which is interesting.
Oh, that's
by the way.
disappointing.
The dove thing comes
The man loves his
primarily
doves.
from The Killer.
Okay.
Primarily from The Killer, which is the film that came before this. But yeah, so his movies are, they have a lot of slow-mo. They do really, really long, unbroken shots of people walking down corridors, shooting guns with both hands, dual-wielding. And it feels almost operatic in the way that it's shot. It feels balletic. And I think it can be a very good entry point into Hong Kong action films because you can recognize a lot of the stylistics that would inspire, Western action films. So, if we've talked about The Matrix, if you watch a 1990 movie, the movies that John Woo made in the 90s in Hong Kong, and then watch The Matrix, you can just instantly see the inspiration there. The movies are very rarely focused on plot. They have very simple melodramatic plots that just enhance what are the stars of the films that are the set pieces, which are absolutely brilliant. And I think anybody who likes action movies should watch his movies. And Hard Boiled is specifically my favorite.
That's the John Woo movie from Hong Kong for sure. I want to mention that John Woo also he directed Face Off in 1997, which I think is an amazing movie, and most people seem to agree is an amazing movie. It's crazy, but it's like crazy in a good way. He also directed the much maligned second Mission Impossible movie
Impossible 2.
that most people consider the worst. The thing is, though, it's not the worst. It's just a completely different tone and style than every other movie in that franchise, and so people tend to not like it. But like, I think if you're kind of aware of what John Woo his MO is, like Mission Impossible 2 is I think is actually really good, and it's just a John Woo movie. Like I said, there's a lot of doves, a lot of slow-mo. It's the guy who made Face Off, so like Mission Impossible 2 is silly, but like Face Off is silly. And like, I don't know, I think it's silly in a good way. So, I ride for John Woo. I haven't seen Hard Boiled, but it's been on my radar for a while.
You should, because I think it's his best movie. I've seen all the 5 or 6 that we mentioned, and I think it's his best one. I really, really like it. But Josh, what's your next pick?
My next and last pick is a movie called Amelie, which I mentioned I saw in college.
Yes.
2001, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who's also come up already. Just a utterly delightful, completely joyful movie. It's about a girl played by Audrey Tautou who had some English language movie success. She was in The Da Vinci Code. just a great performance by her. She plays this girl, Amelie, in Paris, who is kind of a loner and kind of quirky, and she decides to try to, like, start to improve the lives of the people around her, like, surreptitiously, by, like, kind of doing pranks is the wrong word, but kind of, like, pulling strings in their lives to, like, get them to, like, I don't know, fall in love with each other and that kind of stuff. And in the course of doing that, she starts to solve problems in her own life as well. And I don't know, it's not really, that plot may not sound like the best thing, but it's just like, again, just the vibe of the movie is just really joyful and really enjoyable, and the cinematography is honestly some of the best you're ever going to see. Like the colors and the camera movements and the compositions are, it was shot by Bruno Del Bonal, who, when the Coen brothers aren't working with Roger Deakins, they're working with Bruno Del Bonal. He shot Inside Llewyn Davis. He shot Buster Scruggs, and I love his camera work, and his imagery is fantastic. And I think this is frequently cited among some of the best cinematography, at least of the last 20 years, if not of all time. It came out in 2001, if I haven't said that yet. And it just puts me in a really, really good mood watching it, and it's funny and it's endearing. And I watched it yesterday or Friday or something, and I was just like so excited to put it on because it had been a minute since I'd seen it, and just like the entire time I was watching, I just had a smile on my face. And like I said, it's a friend of mine. This is her favorite movie of all time, so it's like it's that kind of movie for some people. I think
it's my girlfriend's favorite movie.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
It's my girlfriend's favorite movie. Yeah.
That's not an uncommon thing. It's not an uncommon thing for a certain kind of person for this to be their favorite movie of all time, particularly if you're an introverted woman, for example, because it's one of the best introverted women movies
very much
ever. Right, exactly. And it's honestly just an absolute delight, and I could not recommend it more. And I think, again, I saw this in college, so it was one of the probably the first 5 or 10 non-English movies I saw, and it was instantly one of my favorites, and big recommend. Amelie.
Chris.
Okay, so my next pick is an Indian film called Andhadhun. Forgive me about the pronunciation there. It's Andhadhun. I just watched this movie very recently. The movie came out in 2018, directed by Sriram Raghavan, who is a pretty well-known director in India. This movie is about a blind pianist who witnesses a crime and the circumstances that spiral out of that situation.
That sounds intriguing.
It's a thriller comedy, and it's a dark comedy, and you can't talk too much about the actual content of the movie without spoilers, unfortunately, because it is that kind of movie that you're going to be guessing at things throughout the entire plot of the movie, and sometimes you'll be right and sometimes you'll be way off. And it's one of those movies that you're going to have questions at the end of the movie, sort of like how Under the Silver Lake we have questions that everyone wants to talk about. At the end of Inception, you have questions. It's that sort of movie that at the end you're going to have some questions that you'll want to talk to about people. So I've been campaigning among my friends to get them to watch this movie because I want to talk about it with people. It is very good. It's on the IMDb Top 250, which apparently means nothing to Josh now. But
it's not that it means nothing. It's not that it means nothing. It's just that I do not think The Shawshank Redemption is the best movie of all time. That's what I think. Okay.
So
make it a film to remember at some point. Make this movie. This sounds really good. I'd love to watch this.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
About it on the podcast.
So that would be my pick. Again, it's a completely unexpected thing, and it's the less you know about it going in, the better off you'll be. So that's my pitch for Andhadhun.
Final pick, Hugo, which I'm excited about.
I'm last.
Pick. Yes.
And I went for a classic.
Well, hold on. Before you say it, you asked us off mic how weird can we get with our picks, and in response to that question, I said, well, in response to your question of how weird can we get, I said, I don't know how weird we should get. However, I want 2 minutes to talk about a certain movie that's very weird, but I want to talk about it. So, and then that ended up being your pick. So
yeah, that was the movie that I had in mind. the reason why I asked how weird
Yes.
are we going to get is because I picked Ingmar Bergman's Persona.
Hell
Which
yes.
is a film released in 1990s,
yes.
in 1966. It's a really so an older movie than most of the ones that we talked about today, and it's considered his masterpiece. Although he made at least 5 movies that are considered masterpieces, but it even he in interviews said, "I think that's my most accomplished piece of cinema." Where do you begin to talk about this movie? This movie was made in 1966. It's a psychological drama. It's about 2 characters.
Psychosexual
One is
drama.
a psychosexual, logical. Again, there are so many interpretations of this movie that is it sexual? We don't know. It's unclear.
I think so.
It is, but not overtly. They talk about sex. Okay, I'll get into it. The film was made in 1966. It stars Bibi Andersson and Liv Ullmann, who are both frequent collaborators of Bergman. Liv Ullmann was even at some point one of the many long-time girlfriends that he had. They had a child together as well. They star as Alma, who is a nurse who is taking care of this actress who has basically decided to, at least this is how the movie presents it, doesn't have anything wrong with her, medically at least, but has decided to basically withdraw herself inside
Stop
of herself.
speaking.
So she doesn't talk,
Yeah.
she stops speaking, she doesn't interact with the outside world, essentially.
In the middle of a play, she stops speaking. She's like performing, and then
She
suddenly
stops
she just,
speaking,
like,
and then she
stops.
doesn't
Yeah.
begin again. And even in the film, she only has 3 lines of dialogue. She only speaks 3 times in the whole film. I will say the film is 80 minutes. The film is only 80 minutes long, which makes watching it a lot more palatable, and it's not as heavy as it sounds. Basically, it's these 2 characters go off to an island, and they live together, and ideally Alma is taking care of Elizabeth, and hopefully to get her out of this sort of self-isolation that she created for herself inside her head, and this refusal to interact. And the film from there is essentially a collection of scenes, but all of it, from the beginning to the end, is open to interpretation. It's not clear, are there really 2 characters? Is one the figment of the imagination of the other character? Is the film about these 2 women falling in love? Is the film about these 2 women who are facing... Basically, it's a really surreal film. It opens and ends with a bizarre montage
surreal,
of images, of very creepy and disturbing images that we don't necessarily... Initially, we don't really understand what they have to do with the film at all.
It opens with increasingly disturbing images to like kind of knock you off balance. Yeah.
And and it's basically a work of surrealist art made into a movie that you can both interpret literally as a story, or you can interpret it as an allegory, and it can be an allegory for so many interesting concepts and ideas. Basically, the identities of the 2 main characters start to kind of blend into each other, and it's at some point it's unclear if there are actually 2 characters or not. It's unclear if they are on separate trajectories and they meet and they learn from each other. It's unclear if the actress is only studying the nurse for a character that she wants to do, but it's open to interpretations. It's weird, it's sexual. It's about womanhood and the expectations of womanhood in society, and how these can mess up with a person's head, and how 2 different women can feel guilty for opposite things, both because they were following the expectations of womanhood and not following the expectations of womanhood in society. And I think it's an endlessly interesting film to watch, and not to mention it's absolutely stunning
Imagery
in terms of cinematography, and
Absolutely.
it breaks the 4th wall. It has really weird shots where the characters look straight into the camera. And you can watch it 15 times and take 15 different things from it. And it was one of the major inspirations for one of my favorite directors, who is David Lynch. And
Yes.
yeah, if you like David Lynch, you have to watch this movie because it's brilliant.
I think a reason
There you
to
go.
talk
And
about
I'm sorry
it.
I was cutting off.
It's okay. I think a reason to talk about Persona now in 2021 is that it bears a lot of similarity to, at least thematic similarity to Mulholland Drive, which is something you cited before. One of my favorite movies,
Yes.
one of your favorite movies. it bears thematic similarity to Mulholland Drive, but also a lot of plot and textual similarity to The Lighthouse from a couple years ago. That was a big hit. Two characters at an isolated location. One of them might be crazy, might not be, and like the audience point of view characters kind of try to figure out what's going on with this person. Maybe the audience point of view character is actually crazy. Who really knows? Also very atmospheric with a heavy emphasis on black and white cinematography, and also like in both The Lighthouse and Persona, there's like a foghorn off in the distance that kind of like contributes to the score and contributes to the atmosphere. And like you said, it's very surreal. Like the opening and closing shots are like inside of a camera that's like filming the movie that you're watching, so it's kind of like up its own ass and breaking the fourth wall. Particularly that like opening sequence that you cited. There is a part in that opening sequence where like a young boy like is watching the movie Persona within the movie Persona. So like I said, it's kind of cameras facing mirrors, watching cameras kind of thing. So
like
but
in Spaceballs.
Yes.
Yes.
Great pull.
That's exactly the point of reference.
But to Hugo's point, it's incredibly open to interpretation while also being like just a flat out entertaining and also beautiful and also thought provoking movie. And I really recommend it. I mentioned that like in the last 5 years, I kind of got into Kurosawa and Bergman and Fellini and Truffaut and all those guys. And like I appreciate all those movies and I understand that they're important, but the one that I want to rewatch and I keep returning to and reaching for and over again is Persona. And it's like one of the few movies that I'm like, oh, I got a free evening. Yeah, I'll watch Persona again. What the hell? Like it's really good. And I really recommend it.
Yeah, and I think it's a brilliant entry point into sort of art house European films. And it's only 80 minutes long, so if you hate it,
that
it's
helps.
not that long.
I mean, again, like I kind of was taking this question to be like, what are some movies for people who've never watched a non-English movie before? What's a good, easy point of entry? I'm not sure Persona is an easy point of entry.
It's
but
not
like
easy, no.
Once you watch a couple of these we've recommended, please watch Persona. It's really, really excellent, especially if you like either Mulholland Drive or The Lighthouse or both, as I love both. Check it out. It's great.
Plus, Persona's on the Letterboxd top 250, so, complete those lists.
So, fancy.
Actually, so as long as we're talking about lists and non-English movies, the BBC in 2018 put out a list of the greatest non-English movies as decided on by like 200 critics from 40 different countries. They really cast a wide net sampling this, and I think Persona was in the top 10. I think it was like number 8 or something. So check out that list. The things that I've seen on that list, I think are really good. So I think it's
probably a pretty good list. It's also on the IMDb top 250. So Persona is pretty much universally among 18-year-old men and everyone else. It's a good movie.
40 critics and BBC critics. So it's a wide approval rating. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to hear that's on the top 250. That makes me happy for that list. Good for you, IMDb top 250.
All right. Well, so I think that's...
does that about wrap it up? Yeah.
That's about wraps it up for today.
Yeah.
Hugo, do you want to introduce our...
Grizz, what are we doing next week?
I'll tackle it. Next week, because Josh has admittedly not watched much in the way of animated films, we're gonna tackle that as a topic. We're going to pick 2 movies that are going to be... We're going to have 2 film to remembers next week. I'm going to pick one. Hugo's picking one. And then our topic is going to be talking to Josh about an intro into anime films, and we'll talk about some of the tropes and things that you can see in anime. The movie that I have selected, as I mentioned earlier in this show, is Your Name. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, so that's going to be one of the film to remembers. And Hugo, what's our other one?
And the other one, surprise, surprise, I picked a psychological thriller, and it's Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue. It's a movie made in 1997, anime movie, very good.
So watch those for next week.
Cool.
And if please remember to like, follow, share, subscribe, and comment, and engage with us. Send your hate tweets to Hugo and me, because apparently we deserve it.
At Good Game Grizz,
yes,
at Hugo_Panay. And don't tweet at
me. Please hate tweet me, please.
All right. Well, so that'll be it for this week. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.